Shalom from Israel, and welcome to our Torah for the Nations weekly meeting. This week we're talking about the Torah portion of Toldot, and Toldot means generations, it means history, as in family history. So we're going to be talking about the history of Isaac and Rebekah. And you know, it's not a coincidence that Sarah was barren, Rebekah and Rachel, 3 out of the 4 of our mothers were all barren. So God desires the prayers of the righteous. So every problem that we have as individuals, whether it's we can't conceive a child, we have health issues, we have financial issues, someone close to us is suffering, all of our problems are tailor-made. Why? God wants to bond with us. You know, when things are going well, sometimes we forget to pray. So God allowed our mothers to be barren so that they would come to Him in prayer. He desires the prayers of the righteous. He desires our prayers. It's not like we live this life here on this earth and then when we die we have this relationship with God. No, He wants to start right here on this earth. And that was one of the reasons, you know, that the manna in the desert, it fell on a daily basis because God wanted to bond with them. He wanted them to come to Him on a daily basis. So Isaac and Rebekah, it says that they prayed opposite each other. And the way that our sages read the Torah is so amazing to me. They always ask the question, why do we need to know that? There's always, you can read it just surface level, or you can start to dig deeper for these secrets. And they say, why do we need to know that Isaac prayed here and Rebekah prayed there? And so some say that this is the source of men and women praying separately that we still do today. You'll notice, if you come to Israel, and you go like to the wall in Jerusalem, you'll see this big dividing wall between the men are over here, the women are over here. If you go into a synagogue, the men pray separately from the women, and that comes from this week's Torah portion. So they're praying and praying that Rebekah would conceive. And she does conceive, but what happens is there is a battle going on in her womb. And believe it or not, that battle is still going on today. She has twins. And Sfat, where I'm broadcasting from, actually makes the map in this week's Torah portion. Rebekah goes to Sfat to talk to Shem at the yeshiva of Shem and Ever. Yeshiva means a school. And she went to Noah's son Shem. Shem lived like 600 years. And he had a yeshiva. He had a school that he taught the 7 Noahide laws, and I'll read it to you what it says, that she went to the yeshiva of Shem to ask God what was going to happen to her. She was having all this struggle in her womb, and she was just miserable. And so through Shem's divine inspiration, God said to her, the ancestors of 2 esteemed individuals are in your womb. Furthermore, 2 kingdoms will separate from your innards, one to wickedness and one to innocence. One kingdom will always become mightier than the other kingdom, for when one rises, the other will fall. The elder son will serve the younger. So, she's told that she has twins. The first one comes out, it's Esau, and it says that he's red, he's rough, he's gruff. It seems like he's got he's like born to be wild, so to speak. He's got the deck is stacked against him. And so how can this be? How can somebody just come out wicked? It's like poor Esau, did he even stand a chance? And so to solve this mystery, we have to look into the book of Samuel. And we see that the very same word, Admoni, that was used to describe Esau is the very same word that's used to describe King David. So what is going on here? We see that Esau and King David were born with the same tendencies, you could say, the same character traits. It's up to each one of us, when we're born with certain tendencies or character traits or impulses, you could say, it's up to each one of us to transform, to elevate, to take our Yetzer Hara, the struggle that we have within us, and to elevate these struggles. King David was able to do it. Esau was not. So Esau could have been as great as King David. King David could have been as evil as Esau. They both had, like, you could say, like these tendencies towards violence. King David was able to hone his tendencies into a way that honored Hashem. He took, when Samuel saw David, it's like David looked like Uncle Esau. It's like, oh no, who is this? But God told him to look at David's eyes, and David followed the laws. David was only going to do what Hashem wanted him to do. And sometimes, if you have enemies that are attacking your women and children, your country, you're allowed to kill. So David was a warrior, but he did it in the right way. He killed, like what we call today the terrorists, or he killed the enemies of Israel. Esau, on the other hand, just went around raping and killing innocent people. So he did not hone in his tendencies, his impulses. He just gave in to them. He was totally in the physical. He didn't elevate anything to a spiritual level like King David did. So it's not that he was born to be wild. It was that he never allowed himself to conquer over his Yetzer Hara. And so sometimes, you can ask, like, why here, the firstborn is supposed to get the blessing for the future. And we see as this plays out, Esau is not the least bit interested in the blessing. And Jacob is obviously the one that's learning in the tents, that wants the blessing. And if you put it in kind of like the simplest terms, what we learn right from the beginning, the creation story, is that darkness comes before light. So Esau represents the darkness, the chaos, and we see this a lot. Like I call this, skeletons in the closet. And it seems like attached to every great person, there's some kind of like scandal or darkness, because we see, that when Jacob did receive the blessing from his father, but there was this deception involved. And he was known as a thief and a liar, that he stole his brother's blessing, and he had to live with that, and he had to reconcile with that. So we see this a lot, like with King David. There's all this like incest in his family. When we go back with his relatives of Boaz comes from the union of Judah and Tamar, and his grandmother Ruth comes from Lot and his daughters. There's all of these incest stories, and the same thing is true with Moses. Moses' mother married her nephew. It was it's like a humbling situation for people that are destined for greatness, like Moses and King David. There's always some skeleton in the closet that, well, you're a product of incest. There's always some kind of immoral act in their line that I guess is an insurance policy that they will remain humble. But it's just the way it is. And so now we see it here with Jacob. He has to deal with this situation that Esau is going to be furious with him, that there's deception, and he's going to have these self-doubts, like, was I really supposed to get the blessing? Because when Isaac finds out that the truth, it was about 5 minutes where he was deceived, and then Esau comes in the door and he realizes that he gave the blessing to Jacob. And it says that when the truth was exposed, Isaac advised Jacob to go to his mother's family in Padam Aram to find a wife there from the daughters of Laban, Rebekah's brother. So we're going to be reading about this in the next couple of weeks, Torah portions, that Jacob he receives this blessing, but there's the whole scam of Rebekah comes up with the plan that we don't want Esau to get the blessing. Everybody knows you should get the blessing, but they came up with this plan. He gets the blessing, but then he has to flee for his life. So he spends 20 years with Laban building his family. And then he's ready to go back to Israel, and he finds out that his brother Esau is coming towards him with 400 men. And so it's this horrible situation where Jacob comes up with a plan to divide his family, to be like, well, if Esau attacks, then while they're attacking half my family and the other half can get away. And it's just the conflict within him makes him just cry out to God, like, was I really supposed to, receive this blessing? And so I'm just going to read to you just what he goes through when he finds out, in this week's Torah portion, how he received the blessing. And then we fast forward to he's going to meet up with Esau again. So how is that going to go? It says, 20 years later, after Jacob and his family left the house of his father-in-law Laban, angel messengers informed Jacob that Esau was approaching with an army of 400 men. Fearing that Esau might be coming to attack him in retribution for usurping his blessing, Jacob decided to divide his family into two camps. In the worst case scenario, if one camp were to be attacked, at least the other would escape. As he became aware of the necessity to be reduced to this division, Jacob cried out to God, I am unworthy of all the kindness and all the truth that you have done for your servant. The need to create a separation within his own family brought him to the realization of his own unworthiness, and he poured out his heart in confession. He understood that when one honestly embraces truth, there's no need to experience divisiveness or conflict. He saw that the need to divide his own family was rooted in his own ability to attain this truth. Okay, so in the end, Jacob doesn't have to divide his family. But we still have to ask, what was the source of this intense self-doubt? If we look further, we can see that Jacob had not yet resolved his inner conflict, the skeleton in the closet, about the apparently deceptive manner in which he received the blessing from his father. After his expression of self-doubt, God sent him the angel of Esau in order to resolve the inner conflict. Most sources agree that this angel was really Jacob's own evil inclination, including his self-doubt and guilt. Since Jacob, he was a man of conscience. It was inevitable that he needed to resolve this inner conflict, which challenged his self-estimation of truthfulness and sincerity. He's like, am I a truthful person? Am I sincere? Like, was I supposed to get the blessing? So Jacob has this battle with either the angel of Esau or his own evil inclination. And after Jacob won the battle, the angel pleaded with Jacob to send him away. And Jacob agreed only on the condition that the angel would bless him. Rashi explains that Jacob wanted the angel to acknowledge his right to his father's blessing, to which Esau still laid claim. The angel's response fulfilled Jacob's request. Here's where Jacob gets his new name, to be called Israel. The angel of Esau asked Jacob, what is your name? And he replied, Jacob. And he said, no longer will it be said that your name is Jacob, but Israel. And Israel means straight with God, one who strives with God. So thus the angel acknowledged that rather than having supplanted the blessing, Jacob had indeed acted straight with God upon receiving the blessing. In other words, through battling Esau's angel, the accuser of his deception, a manifestation of his own self-doubt, Jacob was able to resolve his inner conflict. He was then able to resolve that what had actually occurred was in accordance with divine providence. Yes, he was supposed to receive the blessing. So Jacob is the man of truth and integrity, and it said of his reunion with Esau, seeing your face is like seeing the face of God. Commenting on Jacob's declaration, Rabbi Cook states, his words shall not go down as a vain utterance. Okay, so, we look at this relationship between the two brothers and how it's played out over history. And what is said is that, it was intended that Jacob and Esau worked together. And Esau didn't want any part of it. And all through history, we look in the Purim story, and what do we see? Haman is a descendant of Esau. and Mordecai is a descendant of Jacob. And Jacob's descendants have suffered for 3,000 years at the hand of Esau's descendants. But in the end, Esau, the good part of Esau, is prophesied that they will come back together. So if Esau's descendants are Edom, which is known as Christianity, and what we see happening right now is that the Noahites, most of you listening to me, are coming out of Christianity, coming out of that worldview, and joining Israel straight with God. You're getting straight with God. You're recovering the Torah, recovering this lost relationship that Jacob and Esau are coming back together, working together. It's like the people coming out of Christianity and all that hatred and all that bloodshed, and now like the two brothers are working together. The Bnei Noach, the sons of Noah, and Israel are working together, and this is all part of the plan. It says, just as Israel or Jacob has to face her own inconsistencies, Esau also must face his inconsistencies. The Esau that could have worked together with Jacob to perfect the world must be reconciled with the Esau who made Jacob's life very bitter for the last 3,000 years. Only thus may Jacob and Esau's messianic relationship be realized. Okay, so we see that this is what's happening today. We're able to see it with the Noahites and with Israel coming together, the good part of Esau, the two brothers reuniting in a good way, and that's where we're at right now. So I think it's just so exciting. So yes, Esau came out first. That's just the way it had to be. Then Jacob has this skeleton in the closet that he has to live with, just like David did, just like Moses did. There was always something in their family history, some immorality, something going on. But it's just, in nature we see this with the kernel of wheat. The holiness, the little kernel of wheat is enveloped in the big husk. So the holiness is always surrounded by the unholiness. It's never just very plain to see. You have the light and you have the darkness, and you have to seek out the truth, and you have to be able to see, like when Moses came on the scene to redeem the people, it seemed like it always got worse before it got better. And so we see things happening in the world, that things are getting better for Israel, but then there's always all the darkness. And this is a theme throughout history. It's still happening today. It's still happening in the news, that it's never just, people, our sages have said, Mashiach now, bring the Messiah, but I don't want to be there, because they know that when the Messiah comes, it's going to be, it's going to be so much good, but it's also going to be so much darkness and so much chaos, because it's just part of the way it is. So you can have some kind of understanding that when as we are getting closer and good things are happening, it's always attached that the evil is right there. There's always, like Rebecca's prophecy, there's always like this balance going on between the good and the evil. So maybe that gives you a little bit of understanding of what's going on in our Torah portion, and just what's to come. All right, well, that's all for now, and hope to see you in the Zoom room. Shalom from Israel.